You know what's wild about Vanderpump Rules? The cast talks about honesty like it's a cherished family heirloom, yet the only truth teller on this show has always been the flashback montage. The cameras have exposed more lies, contradictions, and conveniently selective memories than any reunion chair ever has. And the most shocking part? Some of the biggest truth defenders are the same people who crumble the second the footage rolls. Take the Jeremy situation. Half the cast swore he was incapable of anything questionable, while the flashbacks politely reminded us that their memories are about as reliable as Sandoval's moral compass. Or Sheena, champion of emotional transparency, who somehow managed to weaponize her husband's addiction while insisting she was the victim of everyone else's bad behavior. And then there's Lisa, insisting on grace for Sandoval with an urgency that raises more questions than answers. Because every time the cast rewrites history, the footage interrupts like, actually, here's what really happened. So today, we're pulling back the velvet curtain on the biggest question of all. What secret lies is Vanderpump hiding on camera? And why does the cast work so hard to pretend they don't exist? Let's get into it. What an extraordinary social experiment Vanderpump Rules has accidentally become. A decade-long case study in selective memory, misdirected loyalty, gendered apologism, and the sheer athleticism with which certain cast members will hurl themselves headfirst into humiliation. Not since the early days of televised courtroom drama has an ensemble been so committed to contradicting their own archival footage. The show's editors ought to receive hazard pay for enduring the cast's insistence that events everyone just watched happen did not, in fact, happen. Yet here we all are, invited once again into the labyrinth of delusion, misplaced righteousness, and performative outrage that sustains this spectacle. Consider the curious case of Stassi labeling Jeremy creepy. The moment the accusation left her lips, the cast responded like a jury that had already completed deliberations, reached a unanimous verdict, and pre-printed Jeremy would never t-shirts. The insistence that he was a paragon of gentlemanly behavior was so absolute, so aggressively absolute, that the inevitable flashback montage felt less like editing and more like divine intervention. One would think the cast had forgotten that cameras exist. While Jeremy hovered in the background, acting exactly as described, Tom was too busy serenading the room with his trumpet, a metaphor so on the nose that no writer would dare include it in a script for fear of being accused of laziness. Yet the footage betrayed everything the defenders swore could not possibly be true. The real marvel is not that Stassi was right, but that the truth was treated as an inconvenience. Billy was so determined to frame Stassi and Kristen as saboteurs of her romantic prospects that she reframed a basic safety warning as a political campaign against Jeremy's reputation. Evidently, two women expressing concern constitutes a coordinated smear effort, while a man's odd behavior is simply a misunderstood quirk that everyone else is too uptight to appreciate. The irony is almost generous. This, after all, is hardly the first time Billy has thrown her support behind men with remarkable enthusiasm. Her pattern of allying herself with whichever male cast member seems most eager for a defender makes her attachment to Jeremy entirely unsurprising. Whether this devotion stems from lived experiences or an unrelenting need for male validation is anyone's guess, but the consistency cannot be denied. Ariana, for her part, applied her usual brand of moral calculus, blistering commentary for strangers and acquaintances, but diplomatic immunity for her own brother. Her infamous "everyone makes mistakes" philosophy seemed to apply only when she shared DNA with the accused. The result was a spectacle in which the cast contorted themselves into pretzels to defend Jeremy's honor while ignoring the inconvenient footage contradicting their narrative. And now, in later seasons, Ariana no longer speaks to him, a development that aged their righteous indignation like unrefrigerated seafood. Even more amusing were the viewers who declared, without hesitation, that Jeremy could not possibly have behaved inappropriately because Tom had been present. Tom, the man whose attention span is so limited he cannot remain engaged in his own scandals, was apparently expected to serve as a reliable eyewitness. The man missed entire relationship implosions unfolding beside him, Yet somehow his failure to observe Jeremy's behavior rendered the accusation invalid, as if his trumpet-induced tunnel vision made him the ideal arbiter of truth. Jeremy's later legal entanglements provided an unintentional encore to the entire debate, the sort of detail that retroactively vindicates every warning Stassi issued. But even without that information, the flashbacks alone were enough. The footage did what the cast refused to. It told the truth. Of course, this is Vanderpump Rules, a place where women are chastised for sounding the alarm about uncomfortable male behavior, while men are shielded by entire committees of apologists. Stassi and Kristen's warnings were treated as sabotage, while Tom and Ariana's unwavering support for Jeremy was framed as noble loyalty. Yet in the end, it was the so-called witches whose recollections aligned with reality. As always, reality television has a funny way of revealing who is telling the truth. It replays the scene, then comes Sheena, who in every season appears determined to embody the most self-defeating form of self-production known to man. Season 4 offered a masterclass in her uncanny ability to embarrass herself while attempting to embarrass others. Watching her parade Shay's struggles with addiction to the dinner table, as if the information were a conversation piece, was a study in moral vacancy. Announcing another man's prescription regimen and then reminding her own husband not to ask for any, despite the fact he had not been included in the conversation, demonstrated a level of insensitivity that would qualify as performance art if it were not so sincere. Shayna's desire to weaponize Shay's addiction for storyline control, particularly after her own relationship began to unravel, revealed a level of shameless calculation that could only flourish in the ecosystem of reality television. She sought to direct the narrative, but in doing so, managed only to undermine herself. Every attempt at self-promotion becomes another opportunity for self-sabotage. Every scheme to shift blame returns like a boomerang. The unintended comedy lies in her inability to notice this pattern. She aims the spotlight at someone else, only to trip into it herself. Her social reflexes remain equally baffling. When someone is publicly humiliated, she laughs with the gusto of a spectator who forgot she might be implicated next. She transforms moments of collective discomfort into platforms for her own amusement. After the fallout from the infamous affair, she even managed, within minutes, to reframe the devastation as a reflection of her own emotional burden. Her talent for redirecting any conversation toward herself is nothing short of Olympian. Her emotional intelligence, on the other hand, hovers somewhere between absent and inoperative. She seems unable to perceive how her actions land, how her words affect others, or how her relentless pursuit of validation sends her spiraling into situations even the producers could not manufacture. Season after season, she behaves as though self-awareness is optional, and naturally, she opts out. By the time audiences reach the fiasco of Season 9, when Shiana and Brock contemplated eloping during James and Raquel's engagement weekend, it becomes evident that her insatiable hunger for attention overrides every semblance of social decorum. The mere idea of co-opting another couple's celebration required a level of audacity beyond even her usual standard. Yet she executed the plan with such earnestness that one could almost forget how absurd it was. She then graciously decided against marrying that weekend, only to promptly announce her engagement anyway. In a stunning display of self-produced chaos, she managed to turn her decision not to be selfish into an opportunity to dominate the narrative. The revelation that producers helped engineer pieces of this fiasco is hardly surprising. What is surprising is that Sheena required so little prompting. She gladly embraced any storyline that positioned her at the center of attention, even if the attention cast her as delusional. And with the season's ratings struggling, her willingness to hijack James and Raquel's engagement was seen as a lifeline. She accepted the assignment with gusto. After all, few cast members have demonstrated a greater willingness to sacrifice their dignity for airtime. Her romantic arc across the seasons reads like a catalog of misplaced longing. In Season 7, her admission that she thought of Adam during sex with someone else was so quintessentially Sheena that it felt like a parody. It was not even unprecedented behavior. She claimed to have pined for Rob during her wedding to Shay, an admission that retroactively invalidates the entire ceremony. Her talent for longing for whichever man is not present has practically become a personality trait. She cycles through partners with the determined optimism of someone who believes the next one will finally provide the validation she craves. Yet every relationship follows the same trajectory. She smothers, she projects, she romanticizes, she spirals. Season after season, she flits from Adam to Rob to Max like an emotional hummingbird, never pausing long enough to form a genuine connection. Her boastful list of past flings, athletes included, serves less as a record and more as a symptom. What she frames as empowerment reads as compulsive reinvention. What she calls chemistry often resembles desperation. Her brag about multiple athletes running through her, delivered with misplaced pride, only further underscored the running theme of her relationships: quantity over clarity. The most troubling element is her persistence in pursuing men who have expressed clear disinterest. Adam's eventual submission to a friends with benefits arrangement, after repeated refusals, embodied a textbook case of coercive wearing down. That this was framed as romantic victory rather than harassment speaks volumes about her warped understanding of boundaries. Had he not reasserted himself, she likely would have pursued the dynamic into eternity. Moving along the ensemble cast of dysfunction, Sandoval stands as the show's most reliable cautionary tale. A man who treats each relationship as a continuation of the last, repeating the same patterns with new partners and calling it growth. His affair with Raquel felt less like a shocking betrayal, and more like a predictable sequel. He had done it before, overlapping partners, convincing vulnerable women that they were the exception, presenting himself as the antidote to whatever cruelty their previous boyfriends inflicted. Raquel and Ariana arrived in his orbit at particularly fragile moments, emerging from toxic or abusive relationships in which their sense of reality had been blunted. Sandoval offered himself as the comforting alternative, the seemingly gentle refuge from chaos. He was not, of course, a refuge at all. He was simply less overtly destructive. Yet when the bar is subterranean, even a man with a track record of manipulation can appear saintly in comparison. He repeated the strategy with both women, using their vulnerability not to uplift them, but to mask his own deficiencies. His affair with Raquel was merely the latest iteration of this pattern. The claims that their relationship began far earlier than officially stated fit neatly within his established history. He overlaps relationships like a man auditioning for the role of serial romantic disappointment. And of course, when questioned, he insists he never meant to hurt anyone, a line so profoundly disingenuous it would make a screenwriter blush. A man who cheats on 2 consecutive partners with the next woman in line clearly intends something. Denying the harm merely insults the intelligence of anyone listening. The post-affair reunion provided a grotesque highlight reel of his character, culminating in the infamous remark about Ariana keeping her t-shirt on during sex. It was the sort of statement that reveals not only a lack of empathy, but a fundamental absence of human decency. Any lingering doubt about his moral constitution was promptly extinguished. Looking back at earlier seasons, his behavior toward Raquel during the Season 8 reunion now radiates with uncomfortable clarity. The applause, the glowing expressions, the inexplicable enthusiasm, it all reads, in retrospect, like early-stage grooming. Ariana's behavior, slightly tipsy and eager to root for the underdog, only amplified the dynamic. The couple's support for Raquel may have been framed as championing the marginalized, but hindsight suggests something far more opportunistic. Both had already taken heat for calling out Jax and Brittany's infamously homophobic pastor, and seemed to relish the chance to align themselves with someone less threatening, someone who posed no challenge to their social standing. Raquel, with her malleable personality and vacant earnestness, was the perfect candidate. Some speculate that Sandoval's attraction to her stemmed from her lack of agency, her absence of a well-formed identity, her tendency to defer. It tracks. He has never thrived with women who possess strong self-esteem or adult expectations. He gravitates instead toward those who require less effort and provide more admiration. Lisa Vanderpump's involvement in the grand scandal that followed represents yet another thread in the tapestry of misplaced priorities. Her response, focused squarely on Sandoval's mental health and the importance of forgiveness, felt suspiciously rehearsed. For a woman who has spent years enabling the most questionable behaviors of the men on her roster, her sympathy was unsurprising. But the intensity of her investment raised questions. Had she known the truth long before the cameras rolled? The signs suggest yes. The timing of Ken's infamous hot tub announcement, so painfully staged it could have been performed at a dinner theater, hinted strongly at producer coordination. This revelation, delivered in the most unnatural manner possible, suggested a concerted effort to ease the storyline into the public consciousness. The scandal was too valuable a narrative asset to waste, and she, as an executive producer, understood the marketing potential. Yet when the backlash became volcanic, she abruptly shifted into savior mode. Her insistence on humanizing Sandoval, her attempts to guilt others into softening their stance, and her unwavering efforts to position herself as the voice of forgiveness hinted at something deeper than mere moral conflict. Perhaps she feared that the monster she helped unleash might reflect poorly on her own brand. Perhaps her personal history with loss amplified her concern that the fallout could take a darker turn. Or perhaps she simply miscalculated, believing the scandal would bolster ratings without annihilating reputations. Whatever the motive, her behavior showcased once again the gendered double standard she has long embodied. The boys will be boys philosophy. Dressed up in velvet and pearls, she forgives men swiftly, consistently, and often inexplicably, while women are held to a higher standard of behavior and emotional restraint. The show's evolution and eventual implosion has left many viewers grappling with the end of an era. After 11 seasons, the original cast's departure feels oddly personal. Viewers have watched them stumble, backstab, reconcile, relapse, cheat, lie, mature, regress, and implode. The journey from the scrappy early Sir days to the ghostly aftermath of multiple scandals has created a uniquely parasocial bond. Other reality shows may entertain, but few inspire the bizarre emotional investment this one does. The characters feel less like cast members and more like deeply flawed acquaintances, whose chaotic life choices have been broadcast long enough to feel intimate. Their arcs have defined a decade of reality television. Watching them exit the stage feels like closing a very complicated book, one filled with poor decisions, worse apologies, and spectacularly entertaining confrontations. Some have moved on to new franchises, others to obscurity, and viewers are left drifting toward the valley with a sense of reluctant obligation rather than genuine enthusiasm. The magic, after all, was in the original ensemble's combustible chemistry. No spin-off can replicate that. Yet the beauty of this franchise lies in its accidental depth. Beneath its veneer of petty conflict and poor judgment lies a genuinely fascinating study of human behavior. It offers insight into what people forgive, what they ignore, whom they defend, and why. It exposes gender biases, emotional inconsistencies, and the unspoken social rules that govern friendships and betrayals. It reveals how easily groups will rewrite events to protect their preferred narrative, and how quickly those narratives crumble when confronted with playback footage. Most importantly, it demonstrates that even the most chaotic individuals can become compelling when their lives are aired unfiltered. Over the years, viewers have watched these people lie to each other, lie to themselves, and then react with shock when the truth surfaces. They have defended the indefensible, apologized for the inexcusable, and rationalized the irrational. Their capacity for contradiction has been unparalleled, and their commitment to self-delusion unwavering. Yet herein lies the show's brilliance. Its ability to make viewers care, to invest, to debate, to defend, to condemn. Audiences who once entered casually find themselves suddenly navigating multi-season emotional arcs, analyzing character evolution, and comparing infidelity timelines like scholarly researchers. Sandoval's pattern of preying on vulnerable women, Shiana's compulsive search for external validation, Stassi's stubborn commitment to truth-telling even when it earns her public outrage, Billy's desperate alignment with male approval, Ariana's selective moral enforcement, Lisa's chronic male apologism. Each character offers a different psychological angle. Together, they compose a mosaic of dysfunction so compelling that even years later, the narrative still sparks analysis. It is impossible to overlook the cyclical nature of these dynamics. Sandoval gravitates toward wounded partners, offering them just enough charm to seem like an upgrade. Sheena cycles through men with unshakable optimism and diminishing returns. The group protects male misconduct until footage forces them to pivot. Lisa forgives men immediately and women eventually, if at all. The cast weaponizes morality, not out of principle, but out of convenience. As the seasons progressed, the patterns became clearer, and in some cases, more disturbing. For viewers, Jeremy's behavior was excused until it became undeniable. Shay's addiction was exploited for storyline value. Adam was worn down until resistance became more exhausting than compliance. Raquel was groomed while the group applauded. Ariana defended the indefensible until it harmed her. Lisa played moral custodian while enabling the very people she later attempted to rehabilitate. Sandoval repeated his cycle of emotional predation without interruption. Through it all, the franchise remained unflinchingly honest in one respect. It never hid the truth from the audience. The cast may lie, dodge, and manipulate, but the camera does not. It reveals. And that revelation, messy, chaotic, and often uncomfortable, is what keeps viewers obsessed. In the end, Vanderpump Rules has become far more than a show about a group of servers navigating adulthood. It is a cultural artifact of moral inconsistency, an unintentional masterclass in human frailty, and a decades-long portrait of people who never quite learned the lessons they should have. Perhaps that is why audiences remain so captivated. These people fail spectacularly, learn slowly, regress consistently, and entertain relentlessly. And now, with the original cast stepping away, the era closes with the strange melancholy of finishing a long, complicated novel. Some characters devolved, some improved, some imploded, some vanished, but all left an indelible imprint on reality television. Whether one loved them, loathed them, or simply endured them, the result is the same. Watching them was an experience. Flawed, frustrating, inconsistent, addictive, an accidental masterpiece of human contradiction. And perhaps that is the true legacy of the show. Not the scandals, not the romances, not the betrayals, but the revelation that people are endlessly fascinating when the mask slips and the truth is caught on camera.